Usually when we talk about watching a magic trick, there's this expectation of misdirection. Like the magician does a really flashy movement with their right
That's
hand.
right. There's a burst of smoke or something.
Exactly. And your eyes are completely glued to that spectacle, but all the while, the actual mechanics of the illusion are just quietly happening in their left hand, completely out of sight.
Yeah, the spectacle is practically well, it's a survival mechanism for the illusion. We're biologically hardwired to focus on the loudest, most dramatic thing in the room.
Which makes it remarkably easy to miss the structural scaffolding holding the whole thing together.
Absolutely. You just don't see the wires.
And stepping into Aaron Rose's Tech Reader AI Digest for today, which is Wednesday, May 6, 2026, it feels like the tech industry is running, I don't know, 50 flashy misdirections at
Oh,
once.
easily. The whiplash is real today.
It really is. I mean, the headlines are screaming about a messy courtroom drama with Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
But then there's also a massive hardware infrastructure deal in Tennessee and a new mobile app for workplace automation.
Right. Now, on the surface, you just see three isolated magic tricks. They don't seem connected at all.
Exactly. But our mission for you today for this deep dive is to trace that sleight of hand. Because when you look at the mechanics underneath, these stories represent a massive interconnected realignment of physical infrastructure and corporate power.
We're basically looking at a fundamental phase shift here.
Hmm.
The industry is shedding its early chaotic skin, and it's hardening into this remarkably ruthless era of pragmatism.
Yeah, so let's start by looking at that early chaotic skin because the loudest headline today is pulling us straight into a federal courtroom. Elon Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI is actively unwinding the company's past.
Oh, and it is getting messy.
Very. The jury just heard explosive video testimony from Mira Murati. And for those catching up, she's the former chief technology officer, and she was very briefly the CEO during that infamous November 2023 weekend when the board fired Sam Altman.
Yeah, and I mean, that weekend has been dissected ad nauseum, but Marati's testimony under oath provides this incredibly clinical look at the internal friction.
Right.
She stated that CEO Sam Altman actively sowed distrust among top executives. She said he created a culture of chaos, like saying one thing to one leader and the exact opposite to another.
And she didn't just offer up a vague critique of his management style, though. She provided a highly specific operational example, which kind of blew my mind.
Oh, the legal team thing.
Yeah, Murati testified that Altman misled her and other executives regarding the safety protocols for an unreleased model. He explicitly claimed the legal team had cleared those safety protocols.
But in reality, they hadn't.
They just hadn't. And to me, that completely rewrites the historical narrative. We've spent years believing the 2023 boardroom crisis was this grand philosophical war over, AI safety versus commercial speed.
Right, the whole doom versus boom narrative.
Exactly. But Murati is describing a standard, albeit catastrophic, breakdown in basic corporate governance. The CEO bypassed his own legal department on product safety and fabricated an approval to the CTO.
You're hitting on exactly what legal analysts covering the trial are calling the candidness gap.
The candidness gap. That's a great term.
Yeah, well, we have to look back at the exact phrasing the OpenAI board used in their press release when they initially fired Altman. They didn't say he built a rogue algorithm or anything.
Right. They stated he was not consistently candid with the board.
Exactly. But because that phrase felt so deeply corporate and, sanitized, the public just rejected it. They filled the void with sci-fi narratives about dangerous superintelligence.
Which makes sense. I mean, a fight over a world-ending AI model is a much better story than a fight over an internal compliance lie.
It is. It sells more papers. But Murati's testimony brings us crashing back to reality. And keep in mind her positioning here.
Yeah, she doesn't really have a horse in this race, right?
None at all. She is an independent voice who has absolutely no financial or personal stake in Elon Musk winning this federal lawsuit. Her corroboration bridges that candidness gap.
Wow, okay.
It validates that the board was reacting to documented executive deception. The structure of trust had simply evaporated.
And that evaporation of trust seems to be the defining feature of that era. I mean, Aaron Rose's Digest notes that Siobhan Zillis just wrapped up her testimony in the same trial.
Oh yeah, the 2018 text message.
Yeah, the jury is looking at this February 2018 text she sent to Musk. She literally asked him, "Do you prefer I stay close and friendly to OpenAI to keep info flowing?"
Just incredible.
It frames information not as a shared corporate asset, but as a weapon to be smuggled out to a rival.
It really highlights how deeply fractured the loyalties were, even half a decade before the major crisis. It was an environment driven by personality cults and covert alliances rather than, institutional stability.
But the supreme irony of today's news cycle is that while Musk's lawyers are using this exact testimony to tear down OpenAI's history.
Musk himself is aggressively maneuvering to own the future.
Exactly. And he's doing it by partnering with OpenAI's absolute biggest rival.
Right. And this is that shift from courtroom theatrics to raw industrial scaling we were talking about. We are moving from the philosophy of AI to the heavy physical reality of it.
Yeah, so let's look at that reality. Over at Anthropic's Code with Claude Developer Conference in San Francisco today, they dropped a massive announcement.
Huge.
They've signed an agreement to use every single ounce of compute capacity at SpaceX's Colossus One data center in Memphis, Tennessee. And the scale here is just difficult to comprehend.
It really is.
We are talking about 300 megawatts of capacity coming online within the month.
Yeah, to give you a sense of that electrical draw, 300 megawatts is roughly equivalent to the power consumption of several 100,000 homes.
That's insane.
It is a staggering amount of energy dedicated to a single facility.
And it's powering over 220,000 NVIDIA GPUs, including the older H200s and the brand new Blackwell GB200s.
And that inclusion of the Blackwell architecture, that's not just a minor spec bump.
No, not at all. Those chips represent a massive leap in memory bandwidth and processing efficiency. They basically allow models to process data at a speed that changes the math on what consumer AI products can afford to offer.
And we are seeing that economic shift immediately. Anthropic announced that because they secured this Memphis facility, they are instantly doubling the 5-hour rate limits for all Claude Code users.
Just right across the board. Pro, Max, Team, Enterprise.
Yep, across all those plans. Furthermore, they're completely removing peak hour throttling for Pro and Max users and significantly raising the Claude Opus API volumes. They finally have the Silicon pipeline to just open the floodgates.
My head is kind of spinning from the whiplash, though, because just in February, 3 months ago, Elon Musk posted on X calling Anthropic misanthropic.
Oh, I remember. He was actively hostile toward their leadership.
Very. And fast forward to today, and he posts, "No one set off my evil detector." He claims he met with their senior team last week and found them highly competent.
Quite the turnaround.
Yeah, and my read on this is that Musk didn't suddenly have a change of heart about Anthropic's corporate ethos. This feels like he's using them as expensive jewelry to dress up SpaceX for its upcoming initial public offering. Is that what's happening here?
That is exactly the driving force behind this alliance. Financial analysts have coined the term exascale diplomacy to describe this exact behavior.
Exascale diplomacy. I like that.
Yeah, at the scale of hundreds of thousands of GPUs, personal vendettas just become too expensive to maintain. Musk is eyeing a SpaceX IPO valuation between $1.75 and $2 trillion.
$2 trillion. Wow.
Right. And to convince Wall Street to swallow a $2 trillion number, SpaceX cannot simply pitch itself as a rocket manufacturer and satellite internet provider. It needs the AI premium.
Which explains his other post today, right? Confirming that his own AI startup, XAI, is being dissolved as a standalone entity and folded into SpaceX under the brand SpaceXAI.
Exactly. It consolidates his portfolio. But folding your own startup into your own aerospace company doesn't prove to external investors that you run a world-class infrastructure business.
Right. You need outside validation.
Precisely. To prove that SpaceX's data centers are elite, you need a marquee customer to validate the hardware. By securing Anthropic, a company universally recognized as building frontier-level intelligence, Musk gets the ultimate seal of approval.
So Anthropic's signature on a 300-megawatt lease proves to the IPO underwriters that SpaceX AI is a legitimate competitor to Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure.
You got it. They become strange bedfellows out of pure financial necessity.
But Aaron Rose's Digest points out something even wilder. The Memphis data center is just the terrestrial short game. The long game these two companies are collaborating on sounds like pure science fiction, but the physics actually check out.
Oh, the orbital data centers.
Yes, they're exploring orbital AI compute.
It is a radical concept, but it's born out of the two most insurmountable bottlenecks facing terrestrial data centers right now: power generation and heat dissipation.
The power draw makes sense. You just mentioned Memphis pulling enough electricity to run a medium-sized city, but the cooling aspect is where it gets really fascinating for me.
Oh, absolutely.
On Earth, keeping 220,000 GPUs from literally melting themselves into slag requires massive industrial chillers, pumping millions of gallons of water, running giant fans. It's an incredibly inefficient fight against ambient temperature.
Right, but in low Earth orbit, the environment inherently flips those constraints. First, you have access to unfiltered, near-constant solar energy.
Because there's no atmosphere getting in the way.
Exactly. There are no weather systems to block the sun. And depending on the orbital path, you can eliminate nighttime entirely. The power generation potential is effectively boundless compared to a terrestrial grid.
And then there's the cooling. You're in space, so you have access to passive vacuum cooling. But wait, how does that actually work?
Well, this requires a bit of thermodynamic nuance. Space isn't cold in the way a refrigerator is cold, because it's a vacuum. There's no air to absorb the heat off a server rack through convection.
Oh, right, because there's no air to carry the heat away.
Exactly. Instead, the heat must be managed through specialized radiators that emit thermal energy as infrared radiation out into the void.
Okay, that makes sense.
And when you combine those advanced radiators with the fact that you aren't fighting a warm atmosphere, you completely eliminate the need for the massive liquid cooling infrastructure we use on Earth.
But the obvious hurdle has always been gravity, right? Like, putting a single pound of payload into orbit used to cost tens of thousands of dollars, and a modern server rack weighs thousands of pounds.
Right. The economics of launching a data center into space were laughable until the SpaceX Starship became viable.
Of course.
Starship's mass-to-orbit economics changed the entire equation. Because the vehicle is fully reusable and can lift unprecedented tonnage, it transforms orbital compute from a theoretical white paper into a near-term engineering program.
And SpaceX already has the launch cadence and the constellation management experience from their Starlink network.
Exactly. Now they're just figuring out how to swap internet routers for Blackwell GPUs.
It is so wild to think about. I mean, Anthropic, a company that the Pentagon literally flagged as a supply chain risk just back in March, is now renting 220,000 GPUs from a guy who publicly insulted them. And together they're planning to launch servers into outer space. It paints an incredible picture of Anthropic's overarching strategy. They are completely hardware agnostic.
Complete.
Look at their compute stack. They have up to 5 gigawatts locked down with Amazon. They have another 5 gigawatts coming online with Google and Broadcom in 2027. They have $30 billion in Azure capacity with Microsoft, $50 billion with FluidStack, and now this massive SpaceX alliance.
And just for context, 5 gigawatts is essentially the output of several nuclear power plants.
Wow.
Anthropic's strategy is to avoid the brutal capital expenditure of building the physical data centers. Instead, they act as the universal adapter, embedding their models into the underlying infrastructure of every major tech giant on the planet.
Which brings us to the third piece of this puzzle today. Anthropic isn't just taking over the physical hardware in Tennessee and eventually low Earth orbit. They're quietly taking over the software we touch every single day.
Here, the Microsoft Copilot Cowork expansion.
Oh, yes. Today, Microsoft announced a massive expansion of Copilot Cowork. They're bringing it to mobile platforms, iOS and Android, with a general availability target of July 2026.
And this expansion represents a structural change in human-computer interaction. The industry is aggressively moving away from the era of the assistant and entering the era of the operator.
And the difference in those two concepts is really profound. Up until now, using AI has felt like having a brilliant, interactive dictionary sitting on your desk.
Right. You ask it to summarize a PDF or generate some code, and it does it instantly.
But you're still sitting at your desk. You have to actively prompt a machine, review the output, paste it into an email, and hit send. You're still driving the car.
Which means you are the bottleneck in that workflow.
Exactly. Wait, excuse me, that's the core of it. Microsoft moving Cowork to a mobile platform shifts that dynamic completely. It turns the AI from a dictionary into a highly capable intern.
A very autonomous intern.
Yeah. The new workflow looks like this. You're walking to the train, you pull out your phone, you hand the AI a set of digital documents, and you tell it to execute a multi-step financial review while you commute.
You put your phone in your pocket.
Yep, you don't need your laptop open. The cloud executes the work autonomously.
The mechanism that allows the cloud to do this reliably is what Microsoft is calling the skills framework. This is the crucial enterprise-grade component.
So let's dig into how a skill actually functions, because it seems vastly different from how we currently prompt models. Right now, if 30 different employees at a company use AI to file an expense report, they are essentially improvising 30 different sets of instructions.
Exactly. Some will be concise, some will be messy, and the outputs will be wildly inconsistent.
Right.
The skills framework replaces that improvisation with deterministic programming. A management team can encode a reusable, rigid set of instructions for a specific workflow.
So they lock it down.
Yes. They define the exact data sources the AI is allowed to pull from, the specific structural format of the final document, the exact corporate tone of voice it must use, and the specific chain of command it needs to route the document to for final human approval.
So the company essentially builds an expense report skill. When the employee clicks that button on their phone, the AI isn't guessing how to behave. It's following a strict corporate rail system.
Exactly.
And Microsoft has built third-party connectors directly into this framework, too. Your mobile AI operator can reach straight into HubSpot to pull client data, update a Notion workspace, organize a Miro board, or pull financial metrics from Moody's and S&P Global.
It ties all those isolated software islands together. Over time, an organization will build a vast library of these encoded skills. They become a shared automation layer that sits above the human workforce, standardizing processes and eliminating repetitive data entry entirely.
But looking at this from a competitive standpoint, I have a massive question about the underlying technology here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Microsoft has famously poured tens of billions of dollars into their own AI ecosystem, largely tethering their entire corporate identity to OpenAI's models.
Yeah.
Yet, if you look at the interface for Copilot Code Work today, Claude Opus 4.7 Anthropic's flagship model is prominently featured as a selectable engine.
Yep, it's right there.
And Microsoft explicitly noted they designed CoWork in close collaboration with Anthropic. My theory here is that Microsoft is actively commoditizing the AI brain in order to own the nervous system. Am I reading that correctly?
You are interpreting their strategy perfectly. Microsoft recognizes a critical turning point in the industry's life cycle. The true enduring value in enterprise software is shifting away from the underlying language model and toward the workflow layer, the skills framework we just discussed.
So the infrastructure routing the work is suddenly more valuable than the intelligence processing the work.
Because the models themselves are reaching a point of parity. If the intelligence is somewhat interchangeable, enterprise customers are going to demand choice and reliability to avoid vendor lock-in.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. By allowing a premier model like Claude Opus 4.7 to run effortlessly inside their ecosystem, Microsoft ensures that Copilot Cowork remains the indispensable dashboard for the Fortune 500, regardless of whether OpenAI or Anthropic holds the crown for the smartest algorithm on any given week.
And from Anthropic's side, it brilliantly solidifies their position as that universal adapter we talked about. They don't have to build a mobile enterprise app from scratch to compete with Microsoft. They just let Microsoft integrate them.
Exactly.
They don't have to build a $3 billion data center in Memphis. They just rent it from SpaceX. They are quietly acting as the engine running underneath everyone else's chassis.
It is a masterclass in strategic embedding. They are making themselves structurally indispensable to the global economy without owning the physical or interface layers.
Connecting all these dots for you, the listener, navigating this Wednesday in May 2026, the through line across Aaron Rose's digest is unmistakably clear. The AI industry is growing up, and the transition is visible, if you know where to look.
We are definitely leaving behind the era defined by visionary personalities, philosophical debates, and dramatic boardroom coups. The exact history that Mira Murati is currently dismantling under oath.
Right.
In its place, we are entering an era of immense ruthless pragmatism. The defining metrics are now physical infrastructure deals, the exacting of diplomacy required to secure millions of GPUs, and the enterprise-grade automation layer standardizing how work is executed globally.
The magic trick isn't about the flashy bursts of smoke anymore. It's about who owns the theater, who controls the stage lighting, and who is quietly processing the ticketing system in the background.
And the players securing that underlying infrastructure are the ones who will dictate the next decade of computation.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you step away from this material. We've just traced two massive shifts. First, we have tech giants preparing to move physical data centers into the vacuum of low Earth orbit to solve our terrestrial power grids and cooling constraints. Second, our software is evolving from a passive assistant waiting for a prompt into an autonomous operator executing complex, encoded skills in the cloud while we commute. Combine those two realities.
It's quite the combination.
What happens a few years from now when those space-based AI operators, running on near-infinite solar power and free from human intervention, start iterating on their own code? What happens when they begin optimizing and creating entirely new workflows autonomously, while we are completely detached, walking to the train miles below?
You move from an environment where AI manages human work to an environment where AI architects entirely new systems of productivity that humans simply observe.
It's a fundamental reimagining of what it means to go to work. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive into your sources with us. We hope mapping out the mechanics behind these headlines gave you some incredible insight today. Stay intensely curious, and we will catch you next time.